Did you know that loneliness may shrink your brain faster than smoking or poor diet? On Wellness 60 to 100, your trusted guide to healthy aging, we reveal how social isolation isn't just emotional, it's biological. The brain suffers in silence, unless we act. This may be the most overlooked threat to seniors today. Margaret, an 81-year-old widow from Ohio, had always been active in her church and community. But after her husband passed away, she slowly began to withdraw. At first, she skipped Sunday services. Then she stopped answering phone calls and declined family visits, saying she was just tired. Months passed. Her granddaughter noticed subtle changes. Margaret repeated herself more often, forgot names of familiar people, and seemed less emotionally present. At a routine doctor visit, a memory test raised concerns. A brain MRI later revealed significant shrinkage in her hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, areas critical for memory and decision-making. The cause? Not a stroke, not Alzheimer's. It was chronic social isolation. Margaret's doctors explained that loneliness doesn't just hurt emotionally, it activates stress hormones like cortisol, increases brain inflammation, and accelerates neural decline. In fact, recent studies show that long-term loneliness raises dementia risk by up to 40%. Her family was stunned. They had assumed she was just adjusting to life alone. Margaret's story is more common than we think. Behind closed doors, many seniors are silently deteriorating, not from disease, but from disconnection. The good news? With awareness and action, it's never too late to reconnect and protect the aging brain. I'm Dr. Emily Carter, a geriatrician specializing in brain health. Loneliness isn't just sadness, it's a biological threat to the aging brain. Chronic isolation increases stress hormones, reduces neural connections, and shrinks brain volume. If ignored, it can accelerate cognitive decline faster than many physical illnesses. The sooner we intervene, the more brain we can protect. Loneliness is often seen as a social or emotional problem, but in reality, it's a serious biological risk to the aging brain. On Wellness 60 to 100, your trusted source for healthy aging, we dive into groundbreaking research that reveals how isolation physically damages brain structure and function. Prolonged loneliness increases inflammation, disrupts sleep, raises cortisol levels, and leads to the shrinking of memory and emotional control centers like the hippocampus. This episode uncovers the silent neurological impact of being alone too often, and why it's now considered as dangerous as smoking or obesity. If you or someone you love is living in quiet disconnection, this could be the wake-up call you've been waiting for. Loneliness is more than a feeling, it's a stressor that sets off a cascade of biological responses that damage the aging brain. While many assume loneliness is simply an emotional state, science tells a different story. Chronic social isolation physically alters brain chemistry, structure, and function. When a person feels persistently disconnected, the brain interprets it as a threat. This triggers the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal (HPA) axis, releasing stress hormones, especially cortisol. In the short term, cortisol helps the body manage stress. But in older adults, prolonged cortisol exposure can lead to reduced neurogenesis, fewer new brain cells, shrinking of the hippocampus, the memory center of the brain, weakened prefrontal cortex, which controls decision-making and emotional regulation, increased inflammation, which disrupts neural connections and impairs cognition. Loneliness also suppresses BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, a protein essential for brain plasticity and resilience. Without it, the brain struggles to adapt, learn, or recover from injury. On brain scans, lonely seniors often show greater atrophy in areas responsible for memory, empathy, and executive function. Over time, these changes can mimic, or even accelerate, the progression of neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's or vascular dementia. Research from institutions like UCLA and Harvard has confirmed that loneliness increases the risk of cognitive decline by 20 to 40%, independent of physical health. It even affects sleep cycles and immune function, compounding the damage. In short, loneliness rewires the brain for survival, not growth, and in older adults, that shift can become permanent. The most dangerous part. These changes happen quietly, without visible signs, until memory falters, mood changes, or motivation disappears. When an older adult experiences prolonged loneliness, the brain doesn't just feel sad, it physically changes, and certain areas suffer more than others. These regions play key roles in memory, emotion, motivation, and even self-awareness. 1. Hippocampus, memory and learning. Perhaps the most sensitive to loneliness, the hippocampus shrinks under chronic stress. This brain region helps store and retrieve memories. Social interaction stimulates it, but isolation triggers cortisol, which depletes its neurons. MRI studies have shown significantly smaller hippocampal volumes in older adults who report persistent loneliness, even before signs of dementia appear. 2. Prefrontal cortex, decision-making and emotion regulation. Located at the front of the brain, the prefrontal cortex helps us manage emotions, solve problems, and connect socially. When isolated, this region receives less stimulation and becomes less efficient. This can lead to poor decision-making, mood swings, and emotional numbness, symptoms often mistaken for depression or apathy. 3. Amygdala, emotional processing and threat detection. Loneliness can heighten activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear and threat center. Isolated individuals often develop heightened vigilance or anxiety. This can lead to overreactions to minor stressors, emotional hypersensitivity, or withdrawal from even harmless situations. 4. Default mode network, DMN. This interconnected brain network activates when we reflect, daydream, or process internal thoughts. In lonely people, the DMN becomes hyperactive, contributing to rumination, overthinking, and negative self-evaluation, making loneliness even harder to escape. 5. Anterior cingulate cortex, social pain. This area registers social rejection and exclusion. Chronic loneliness keeps it activated, creating a cycle of perceived rejection and withdrawal, even when opportunities for connection exist. Together, these vulnerable areas form a neural map of loneliness, one that affects both mental clarity and emotional well-being. When neglected, these changes grow deeper, faster, and harder to reverse. Loneliness doesn't just affect how seniors feel. It can determine how long they live, how well they think, and how vulnerable they are to life-threatening conditions. Studies over the past decade have shown that chronic loneliness is one of the strongest predictors of poor aging outcomes, including dementia, stroke, and early death. 1. Dementia risk increases by 40%. A landmark study published in JAMA Psychiatry found that older adults who reported persistent feelings of loneliness had a 40% higher risk of developing dementia, even after adjusting for lifestyle and health conditions. The constant stress of isolation damages the hippocampus and reduces cognitive reserve, making the brain more susceptible to decline. 2. Stroke and cardiovascular disease. Loneliness increases levels of inflammatory markers like C-reactive protein, CRP, and interleukin-6, IL-6, which damage blood vessels and raise blood pressure. Socially isolated individuals have a significantly higher risk of stroke and heart attack, regardless of their cholesterol or exercise habits. 3. Shortened life expectancy. Loneliness has been linked to a 26 to 32% increased risk of early death, comparable to the risks associated with smoking 15 cigarettes per day. It impairs immune function, disrupts sleep, and raises cortisol, causing a systemic weakening of the body over time. 4. Greater risk of functional decline. Isolated seniors are more likely to develop frailty, mobility issues, and loss of independence. They often delay seeking medical care, lack motivation for physical activity, and are more prone to falls and hospitalization. 5. Mental health breakdown. Persistent loneliness can spiral into clinical depression, anxiety, or apathy, creating a feedback loop that deepens isolation and further damages brain health. Loneliness isn't a soft issue, it's a silent epidemic. Recognizing its deadly reach is the first step toward protecting both the brain and body in later life. Not all loneliness is obvious. Some seniors may appear socially active, attending family events, chatting with neighbors, even smiling often, yet still experience a deep, hidden sense of isolation. This phenomenon is known as silent loneliness. Why is it dangerous? Because it goes unnoticed by caregivers, loved ones, and even doctors. And it often affects those we assume are doing fine. Here's how to recognize it. 1. Superficial interaction. A socially active senior may engage in routine conversations, but avoid deeper, emotional exchanges. They may talk about the weather or errands but rarely open up about how they feel. When asked how they're doing, they say, "I'm fine," even if they're quietly struggling. 2. Signs of emotional withdrawal. Look for reduced enthusiasm. Do they attend events but seem disengaged? Do they laugh less, make fewer eye contacts, or excuse themselves early? These may indicate they are physically present but emotionally detached. 3. Loss of purpose or motivation. Even with a calendar full of activities, a senior experiencing silent loneliness may express apathy about life. They may stop pursuing hobbies they once loved or decline new opportunities for connection. 4. Sudden mood changes. Irritability, sadness, or anxiety that seems to come out of nowhere may signal a deeper emotional void. Sometimes, silent loneliness manifests through restlessness or unexplained fatigue. 5. Idealization of the past. A fixation on the way things used to be can suggest unresolved grief or isolation. If a senior constantly talks about lost loved ones or the better days behind them, it may reflect a lack of present emotional connection. Silent loneliness often stems from feeling misunderstood, unheard, or emotionally invisible, even in a crowd. The brain still suffers the stress and neurological decline caused by isolation. Recognizing these signs early allows families and professionals to respond, not just with activities, but with authentic emotional connection that the aging brain truly craves. The good news? While loneliness deeply affects the brain, it's not irreversible. With the right interventions, medical, social, and community-based, we can reduce its neurological impact and even help the brain recover. Let's explore how. 1. Medical evaluation and mental health support. Start by discussing symptoms with a healthcare provider. Chronic loneliness can mimic or trigger depression, anxiety, or early dementia. A thorough exam can help identify underlying issues such as vitamin deficiencies, sleep disorders, or medication side effects that contribute to isolation. Therapy, especially with geriatric-trained psychologists, offers seniors a safe space to process grief, trauma, or emotional voids. 2. Structured social engagement. Encourage consistent, meaningful interaction, not just small talk, but emotional connection. Programs like senior buddy systems, volunteer-led home visits, or intergenerational activities, e.g., storytelling with schoolchildren, help restore a sense of purpose and belonging. 3. Group-based cognitive and physical activities. Seniors benefit immensely from group exercise, art therapy, or brain training workshops. These stimulate neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire and heal, and reduce social fear. Studies show such activities increase gray matter in socially deprived individuals. 4. Community resources and tech aids. Leverage local senior centers, religious groups, or nonprofits that offer transportation, virtual companionship, or check-in calls. For those homebound, teach them to use video calls, voice assistants, or senior-friendly social platforms like Papa or Get Set Up. 5. Purpose-centered engagement. Loneliness often stems from a loss of identity. Encourage roles like mentoring, volunteering, or caregiving for pets or plants. Purpose activates reward circuits in the brain and promotes emotional resilience. No one intervention fits all. What matters most is consistency and emotional authenticity. Even small, repeated connections can buffer the brain against decline. Loneliness damages slowly, but connection heals daily. The key is to start, today. When loneliness goes unaddressed, the damage is more than emotional, it's neurological and potentially irreversible. Prolonged isolation shrinks critical brain regions, impairs memory, raises inflammation, and weakens decision-making abilities. Seniors who remain disconnected face a sharply increased risk of dementia, stroke, depression, and early death. Worse, they may not even realize what's happening until symptoms are advanced. By the time families notice, precious time for intervention may already be lost. Ignoring loneliness means letting the brain deteriorate in silence. But when we treat it as a serious health risk, not just a mood, we can act early and protect what matters most: clarity, connection, and quality of life. As a geriatric physician, I urge families not to underestimate the effects of loneliness. It's not just an emotional issue, it's a neurological emergency. If you notice a senior becoming more withdrawn, less engaged, or emotionally flat, don't wait. Gently ask about their daily connections. Listen without judgment. Encourage routines that include regular human interaction, phone calls, community groups, or even simple daily walks with a neighbor. If mobility or anxiety is a barrier, explore virtual companionship or therapy. In many cases, just one meaningful interaction per day can reduce stress hormones and stimulate healthy brain activity. Also, talk to their doctor. Loneliness often coexists with depression, cognitive decline, or nutritional deficiencies, and those can be treated. The brain responds to connection. It can heal, adapt, and grow at any age if we give it what it needs: presence, purpose, and people. Dr. Emily Carter. If you found this eye-opening, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, and share to help others understand the silent toll of loneliness. Subscribe to Wellness 60 to 100 for more expert-backed insights on healthy aging, and hit the bell so you never miss a moment that could protect a mind or a life.